running in the other direction, was that a result of, and I think I understand it because I haven't turned a radio on in 10 years. So, and that comes with its own journey, but running in the other direction. And I think that's an interesting kind of jumping off point into what you ran into, and what so many of us try to run into, right? You get to a point in your life where you have experienced enormous success, and you're told that this is where you should be. You're told that you're great. You're told that this is the path your life should take. And that path is this destination of these external gratifications, right? That don't you want to do this? Don't you want to do that? And you buy it. In your case, you bought it. In my case, I bought it. You can be this, you can be that, you can be the best at this. Don't you want to do this? And you go, yeah, I guess I do, because this is...
give me all that Kool-Aid.
Yeah, right. You know what I mean? Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the self-worth that you feel from others identify. But there's this really disingenuous approach to it that so many people take when it's your life, right? And so you buy those things and you go, yeah, okay, if I reach that mountain, and then you reach that mountain, which you did in 2014, you reach the top of that mountain as an Olympic medalist. It is this incredible experience. And then you want to reach the top of that mountain again in the face of extreme odds, right? Where life is trying to tell you something and we're not listening. Mm-hmm. And the damage that we do when the universe gives us a message like a 200-pound mirror at a Pilates class falling on
like, take a closer
head.
Look, bud, Like, what were the messages I missed? Like, how many?
No, you bring up a great point, and there's an analogy within what has happened to you. You look at those obviously as extreme disappointments, but you look back on it now and you're like, oh my God, what was I not listening to? But how is it that you're in this position now, jumping off of this incredible disappointment? How long did you, because you're here now, and we'll get to the journey now, what it was like, what happened, and where you're going. But that experience of wondering if it's over, being confirmed at the last Worlds where you come in fourth, or the qualifications for the Olympics, you come in fourth again. What was that like? What was that feeling like? Because you've all of a sudden put all your eggs in that basket, which we've just talked about. You bought everybody else's dream for you. You think it's yours. And you go, now what? There might not be a scarier event for someone in your situation, an elite athlete translating what's going on in their life as extreme failure as the end, right? For some people, like, this is all that I've done. This is my entire life. So what was that experience like?
Yeah. As much as I can relate to it, felt like a death.
Felt like you were dying.
Felt like I was dying.
And there was no purpose. That was your purpose.
Yeah. And just the attachment to the outcome. The attachment to that ideal, that dream. It was dying in my hands, in front of my eyes, in front of many eyes, which adds a whole other layer to the humiliation feeling because of the idea that I can't be seen as failing, right? It's
because you never really failed before.
I definitely failed.
Well, I know we all have. I mean,
but there's still a fear of it.
Yeah.
Right. In a sport that's judged where, your outfit and your smile and your haircut and your, pointed toes and everything, like the way you present yourself it plays a role in the way you're judged and perceived. There's so much fear I had so much fear. I'm not going to speak for other skaters, but from my experience of seeing the world, and I know others have that, but my experience was there was so much fear of showing faults. There was so much fear of not being this idea of perfection, even though it doesn't exist, and even though I was so far away from perfection. It's just that it was so visceral, and the sad part is my last nationals, I knew it was my last nationals, and I wanted to enjoy it and soak it up. Like my dear friend Alaj Balde, he just ran a camp for skaters called The Art of Performance, doing amazing things with his wife Michelle. to help skaters get in touch with their authentic performer. And Mariano and I were there helping, doing some off-ice stuff.
Mm-hmm.
His last national, he found his grace and managed to skate his last nationals just with this place of awe and gratitude and joy. And it was so beautiful. And I wanted that for myself, but I was still so stuck on the outcome that I robbed my own joy.
Expectations. I want to talk about those for a little bit, because your life has brought you to a place where your expectations for yourself are very different. And I also want to get into the spiritual journey you've been on, and obviously the psychedelic journey that you've taken, and what you do now, how, you've gone from being this person that's expected all these things of himself, thought life was a certain way, thought you could control aspects of your life. And as it relates to so many stories, even like mine, there were, and I'll tell you why I came to meet you. There were times over the past, I would say 3-4 months, knowing what I do for a living, where I came from, doing a morning show in Toronto for as long as I did a morning show for. When we connected, you're like, "Oh, that's you," and I'm like, "Yeah, that's me. How you doing?" And how miserable I have become with the idea that talking into a microphone is my identity. Miserable. There was a time over the past 3-4 months where, at the end stages of your career, where I absolutely was disgusted by talking into a microphone, doing a podcast, delivering content. To the point where literally about 2-3 months ago, I almost shut the lights off. I almost said, you know what, fuck it. Zero interest in doing podcasts anymore. I would start a podcast with a complete panic attack, a huge meltdown. My hands would get sweaty, and I couldn't think straight. I couldn't communicate properly. I could not think, and I was an embarrassment to myself. I didn't want to be here. Not on this planet. I love my life, but this part of my life, something I thought I was born and bred to do, something that I had experienced so much success, material success, analytical success, was something that made me physically sick to my stomach. And that part of my journey has been the hardest part of my journey. And, you and I have kind of swapped stories, right? Whether it's being in a cold rink, getting triggered by that, me getting triggered by microphones.
Isn't it interesting how both are related to the body speaking? There's something beyond the cognitive knowing.
That manifests itself through your body.
It's through the body, right?
Yeah, I've never experienced that before. I used to hear about panic attacks or hear about these episodes that people would have, and I'm unafraid to talk about it. I talk about, my alcoholism. I talk about my failures and the things that I've learned through them unabashedly. But this is something that was specifically very personal for me, which I haven't talked about, which is, I felt like for the first time in a long time, I was an imposter in my own skin. And the misery and the shame that came from that, because how I interpreted it was, and zero peace in my life, afraid to look at myself, afraid to talk about this with anybody else. How I interpreted how my anxiety and my stress was manifesting itself through simply turning on a microphone was that you've lost it. You've lost your nerve. You're not meant for this anymore. And this is the internal dialogue. And if anybody says anything bad about me, no big deal, because the things that I say about myself
way worse.
are way worse.
Right.
I'm preparing for it all the time. But how it manifested itself is, Dean, you are no good at this. You were never good at this. You were always an imposter. You are still an imposter. And you are not worthy of this. Other people are better. They have more. You have nothing. Stop and go do something else. You're not worthy. You're not good enough. You're not enough. That's how I interpreted it. And for all the things that I've worked on in my life, whether it's not drinking or CBT or psychotherapy, this has been my biggest struggle. This was the hardest personal time in my life prior to meeting you, and even now working through those things that I've ever experienced. And it's what brought me to the retreat. It's what forced me, and can't explain it. It's what forced me to get uncomfortable and go and try something that 5 years ago I would have walked into me doing what I was doing with you and that beautiful group of people on the weekend at a hobby farm north of Toronto, laying around in a room on a mat, taking psilocybin and mushroom tea and eating stems of mushrooms for 6 hours while going through this transformative experience. If I had walked in on me doing that, which you look back on it now, according to how I felt, maybe an act of desperation, I would have mocked myself. I would have made fun of myself. I would have walked into what I was doing that weekend and said, what are you people up to in this room?
Bunch of kooks.
Yeah, yeah, but I don't know where to go in terms of trying to understand what it was that I was dealing with. I can only tell you that for all the things that I knew were very true, that I am not defined by that. I am not defined by turning on a microphone. I'm not defined by those things. Is that the poisoned aspect of how I looked at it changed after I went through that experience with you and Mariana and V and all those beautiful people who were in that room. And I want to know why.
Don't we all? First, Dean, I want to say thank you. Thank you for sharing all of that. You know, it's something that I've learned through this journey is to stop and honor someone who shares vulnerably. We don't do that enough. You know, we don't honor how hard it is in our society to be vulnerable and truthful. And every time someone does, I think we can all take a moment to just say, hey, thank you. You know, thank you for showing up. Thank you for sharing that truth. Your fear with the microphone, your relationship to this instrument that was your paintbrush, your expression, this place where you got to share something beautiful of yourself became this this deep fear, right? And you talked about me with the cold. I moved to the jungle in Central America, you know. I'm like,
that's a great response to cold being a trigger.
I don't want to wear shoes. I don't, of course. But the hilarious and of course kind of expected thing is that I arrived there and my ship was waiting for me there. You know, like I can be in paradise and shirtless, shoeless, and warm all the time, and I still have to face all my demons. It doesn't escape that thing, but it's this interesting journey, right, of going from this thing I loved to this thing that now is bringing up all of my demons, and going from this place of I used to relate to the things that brought up my demons as being bad, and now I'm finding a way to say thank you. Oh, you're excavating. I'm being offered an opportunity to commune with and understand these aspects of myself that are harder to look at, but actually just want love. They're like expressions of an aspect of me that, because they've been so oppressed and suppressed, are screaming for attention, and they're doing it in a way that's quote unquote ugly, so that they get attention. The way a child who's avoided will do whatever they can.
You saying my body was throwing a temper tantrum?
Could be. Your body, your inner child,
a psychosomatic temper tantrum.
I look, science has corroborated what many ancient societies have known, is that the issues lie in the tissues. You learn that when you go to a massage.
Yeah.
We store our dis-ease in the body in various ways, and the expression of how that sits in the body and comes out is different in each person, but it's like a clue if we choose to listen.
You said something in an article that you wrote, and I want to bring this up because I thought it was really sentient. It kind of builds into what we're talking about here. peace being a state of being, and feeling very unpeaceful when you're having a panic attack. I don't know if anybody's ever had one of those.
They suck.
They're the worst.
Yeah.
But you said something that was fascinating. You said it's very possible to be miserable, frustrated, stressed, anxious, and unhappy while living in a place that is supposed to fix all of that. Connecting with peace is a practice that asks for consistency and discipline. But effectively, you go on to say, whatever you leave behind emotionally, mentally, energetically will greet you where you are going.
Yeah.
Right. Is you live in the jungle, you're triggered by cold, you go to the jungle, you're still living with you in the jungle, right? You're still living with you in a different environment, whether it's me, same thing. I'm still going to face me no matter where I'm going.
Absolutely. I mean, there's air conditioning down there in some places, and I'm back in the rink,
You get triggered by it still.
Yeah. But it's an expression, right? It's literally a trigger. It's like, here's your doorway. Don't forget, this is asking to be worked on. This is asking to be seen.
So why do we interpret that as there's something wrong with us?
Because I believe we live in a world where we have symptom suppression at the basis of our wellness, right? We see being well as like we're not experiencing discomfort. And when we're experiencing discomfort, we find ways to suppress it. So we can get back to doing the things. We're human doings before human beings,
Oh, I like that. Human doings before human beings.
Right. And it's, to kind of go back into my journey, I first went down to Costa Rica during the pandemic and got stuck down there. Poor me.
Yeah, it sucks.
And it was the first time I let myself be. Like, just no agenda. Sit still. Listen. Feel. It was so fascinating and extremely difficult. And it was the first time I really went into, who am I? Underneath, what am I? Am I my thoughts? Am I the things I've done? Am I the choices I've made, the choices I make? Or am I the deeper knowing that witnesses all of it? Do I have to define myself by all of these things? Or can I be the alchemizer that turns them into something beautiful, into growth? In Buddhism, they talk about the lotus flower. It grows in the muck and then produces the most beautiful flower, but it needs the muck, right? Carl Jung talks about a tree can only grow as tall as its roots reach down into hell, the depths of hell, right? So when we take away this good versus bad thing and we look at opportunity, or we look at things happening for us, and we embrace the challenges as fuel for our transformation. We talk about mushrooms, the kingdom of fungi, the most resilient species on the planet that can digest rocks and turn that into food. How can we learn to digest our rocks and turn them into fuel for our own transformation? How can we learn to become that alchemizer that sees all things as potential? Right? Not so confined by the categories and labels of good versus bad that man has created, and understanding more of an innate knowing of what feels true inside as our compass. Removing this attachment to only seeing and experiencing life through the head, and tapping back into the heart, which has this kind of fluffy connotation. That's
it doesn't sound like it. That's right. Like if you said, go with your heart as opposed to your head. I am so analytical. You and I talked about this too, right? Like
me
even
too.
this weekend,
I'm a very analytical mind.
Yeah, we talked about that. How I get to the retreat this weekend, and it's a very spiritual thing. And I put the spiritual stuff over here because, as I said to you, I'm more interested in neurons and synapses and networking and how your brain works and how the chemical aspect of our perceptions can be changed if you use this plant, right? Where I show up to a psilocybin retreat, you're facilitating the whole thing. And by the end of it, I'm like, there's something I'm missing. There's something that I don't understand. But that was my intention. That my intention was to go there and just have someone fix my brain for me real quick.
Right.
But it wasn't about that after I left.
Yeah, I mean, getting deeper into this kind of brain versus mind.
Yeah.
Where does the mind exist? Where does our consciousness exist? Where does the soul exist? These are different, philosophical, spiritual paths have different approaches to it. But if you look at philosophy and you look at spirituality, I believe they all kind of converge at this understanding how to work with the mind and not being a slave to it. Right? And within that, we have to understand the workings of the mind. What are my tendencies? Where does my egocentric way of being come into play? Why does it always want to attach onto everything? You come up with something good and all of a sudden it's like, I did that, I created that.
We insert our importance into everything, don't we? Yeah.
Right. So it's this constant dance of maybe there's an inner child aspect that still needs that. Like, how can we be kind and be like, yeah, no, I see you, I know that's what you need. That's okay. It's beautiful. What you did is beautiful. And you're coming up with something that guaranteed has already been thought of. I like to see it as like, well, maybe I just extended my antenna and dialed into the right channel and something came through and I was able to articulate it, which is my own beautiful, unique expression, which is, great. And that uniqueness is very important. And at the same time, we're all connected to this unity of potential that exists everywhere, right? Everything is energy, everything is potential, everything is there, available, right? And when we can kind of zoom out and detach ourselves from our confinement of what we think we know, the realm of possibility expands, right? And this is where I think ritual and reverence and practices, these ancient practices, are really useful in that they teach us how to get out of the mind's desire to hijack everything.
Sure.
It's connecting to something bigger. It's connecting to something else. It's tapping ourselves into respect. It's tapping ourselves into deep gratitude. It's tapping ourselves into this, humble studentship of, well, if I think I know this, what else is there? Right? As soon as I think I know something, I put a label on it, I put it in a box, it has nowhere to grow. It's stuck. And now I've built a building on top of that pillar of knowing. What if that pillar was
bullshit,
completely straight? And you've got 100-story building anchored on that support beam.
You get a little shaky.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is why it's so hard for people to change their mind, because their entire reality comes crashing down because their belief is resting on that pillar.